Welcome to the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Trish.
And this is our podcast. We talk about wrestling news and various topics from different promotions, primarily AEW, but also New Japan Pro Wrestling, WWE, and topics from around the wrestling world. Whatever we find interesting, and we hope you will too. Today is December 10th, 2023, and we are going to kick it off with some housekeeping. Unfortunately, our next episode we would record on December 24th and release it on December 26th, but we are going to take some time away from our grueling taping schedule of every other week and skip our next one because of the holidays, and we will be returning back to you guys on January 9th, 2023. So we'll have lots of discussion about the World's End pay-per-view, everything going on, possibly even, when's Wrestle Kingdom, Trish? I'm a terrible fan.
Wrestle Kingdom. Yeah. We'll have All Japan, Noah, just pretty much the whole Japanese wrestling week. Yeah.
We'll have some stuff to watch while we're off. Anyway, so we will kick off the actual meat of episode 7. Can you believe we've been doing this for 14 weeks, Trish? Episode 7?
I can't even believe anyone listens to us.
I feel the same. I'm like, this is a simulation.
It's insane.
Yeah. Crazy. We appreciate you all.
We do.
But we are going to subtitle this episode the Corrections episode because we're going to cover some stuff we've been wrong about. Shock, horror, awe, but we are not always correct. So the first thing we were wrong about, friends, was from our last episode, episode 6, at the, I think it came out on November 28th. We were wrong about CM Punk's return promo on Raw on Monday, November 27th. This promo we said would be sort of, intense and shooty, and it turned out to be sort of a wet fart of a promo. I think it's fair to say it was critically panned, right?
Sure.
So we were wrong about that one. We thought that was going to be, a hot topic, and people were going through their feelings about that promo. Fortunately, Punk's appearance on SmackDown on Friday, the 8th of December, was a little bit better, and he showed up at the NXT PLE deadline last night to ham it up with Shawn Michaels in the ring. It's been kind of a fascinating, masterful sidelining of CM Punk. So just to kind of recap some of this for you guys. See, there was a Raw episode when he came back on the 27th. It was the first hour of Raw presented commercial-free, and Punk got 6 minutes at the very end of the episode. Like literally 10:54 Eastern time. To give his promo, and that was it. So the episode did phenomenal ratings, but Punk's quarter was nowhere near the top of the list, and I think the best performing quarters were with Randy Orton. So it was kind of interesting, and there was a lot of reaction the next couple of days given the disappointing elements of the promo, and a lot of various outlets with suspiciously planted items about what was next for CM Punk and how he was doing, including the possible floating of a WrestleMania program with Stone Cold Steve Austin. So, Trish, what were your thoughts about this whole situation?
There's a TV show that we used to be on in the UK, and it was called Saturday Night Takeaway, and it had these guys on deck, and they used to do this thing. It's a popular meme where they used to get somebody. It's like in Practical Jokers. They used to get somebody to say something. And then they used to just burst out laughing, and I just imagine him going, "Say I'm home," and then he does it, and they just die laughing. Someone make us that great. And that's all I can think. It's a really funny one because as much as they were kind of sidelining him, they were also protecting him in some ways as well, which makes sense because you've made that investment. So the first Raw he's on, it does 1.88 million, 0.65 in a demo, 5th highest viewership of the year. But he is in that last segment, and he is outdrawn by Orton at the start, by Cody at the start of the second hour, by Seth at the start of the third hour, and doesn't hit 2 million viewers, which came up in the minute by minutes that Wade Keller went over. It was good. And then they protect him in some ways because they didn't put him on SmackDown against the big college football game.
Yep.
They didn't put him on Raw against the NFL and the NBA game for the in-season tournament. So you have protected him in a way. However, tomorrow you're going to put him on Raw, and you're going to start this program with Seth Rollins, and he's going up against 2 NFL football games. So it will be interesting how that performs. Yeah, SmackDown looks like it did pretty well.
Yep.
Bounced back from its college football competition. You know, Fast National was 2.29 million, 0.57. So likely highest since the 13th of October, and maybe since the 15th of September, which is pretty much Cena territory. However, it's been really weird. So I think there's like 2 or 3 things that really stick out for me. And the first is that if you were a fan of CM Punk and you watched him in AEW, and you watched him talk about WWE, and you've watched him, and you believe in this caricature, this kind of authenticity, it's very clear that that's just been shot to pieces.
Yeah.
It's like, there's no authenticity left. So people are seeing the reality that he wanted to be the main guy in WWE. He was never interested in being anything else.
No.
And it's only because that pathway wasn't open for him that he went looking at AEW. And only once AEW was a guaranteed success.
Yes.
You know? And Dave Meltzer talked about that this morning on Observer Radio, about how, you know, he disregarded AEW until they were a success, and then was probably looking for a way out of Collision, thinking it wouldn't be a success, which was quite an interesting thing. The other thing is that I don't think this audience, and you can tell by the lines that just didn't get reaction, I don't think they care for what Punk normally kind of represents. So
no.
They don't care about he had his time cut. Nobody reacted to that.
No.
They don't care about this, you know, punching somebody backstage line. Why would they? Like, why would this be appealing to them? They want him to come back as that kind of nostalgia act, to be like, oh, we have CM Punk, he's a star, let's cheer for him. They're not interested in this. And him doing, like, the promos that he's doing currently, it's just like, oh, he can't do the I'm home thing, because people just went, that's not you, what are you doing? No. But you can't do this kind of insider stuff, because that's not what that audience want. They don't want to be told that there's something wrong with WWE. That's not what they're interested in, and it's not what their stories are built on. And, you know, here's a question. So he came back with Randy Orton, and it kind of reminded me of when Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole came in at the same time into AEW. And so far, you know, you watch the crowds, and Jim Valley pointed this out on Raw yesterday, they're standing clapping for Orton, they're going nuts for Orton, they're not going as big for CM Punk. And that's, so, you know, Randy Orton kind of overshadowing him is probably something that was a little bit unforeseen. It's kind of interesting in that way, and to look at Danielson really reinvented himself when he went to AEW.
Yes.
Punk didn't. He was the same guy. Same merch, same look, same promos, everything. You know, do you think that he can actually reinvent himself in WWE this time?
No, but I don't think he needs to. Like, and I think you saw it with what happened on Friday with his promo from Raw, which was a decent promo, a competent promo delivered well, right? He's a good promo. He can do he does a good job in the ring. And yet people were like, it's one of the best promos of the year. And I'm like, you know, why? Because he set up a bunch of feuds. And I'm like, oh, like, I just kept thinking the bar is so low for white men. Like, he did the bare minimum of what he's supposed to do. Oh my God, it's the best thing we've ever seen. So I don't think he has to, because I think as long as he does what he's supposed to do and says the lines, the WWE audience will cheer. And the Punk fanatics, the people that are still left that think he's the greatest thing ever, will just continue to believe that he's the greatest thing ever. Like, you know, actual logic isn't going to enter their minds now. Like, you know, they're not, like, after the last 2 years and everything, we saw nothing else after Collision and what an absolute disaster that was, you know. And now I'm not talking about the backstage drama, just the on-screen product. Like, it wasn't good, but, like, people have, like, that was the greatest book television show of the last 20 years. Like, okay. Like, again, like, fine. I don't know what to tell you. So I'm kind of like, my attitude with Punk right now, and this is my question for you, right? So he's going in, based on what he's done the last 2 nights in the 2 shows and then the NXT, right? He's going into a feud with Seth Rollins. Which one of them's supposed to be the babyface for this?
I think Punk's going to end up the babyface. And I only think it is because Seth's going to say, you know, this guy doesn't really want to be here, that sort of thing. And I don't think that audience wants to hear that.
No.
And Seth, delivery-wise, is not always the strongest promo. So
Right.
there is a danger of him being eaten up. And not in a way, people used to say, oh, Hangman will get eaten up, and then he didn't. No, Seth struggles far more than that. I think it's a difficult one. And Seth's been champion for a while as well. And you've got this new, fresh guy coming in. And we've seen this many a time with WWE audiences,
Right.
No matter what they do elsewhere. Hulk Hogan, prime example. Every single time. Comes back in, not recently, obviously, but in the 2 decades previous, every time he'd come back in, he would be the cheered for guy.
Right.
Shawn Michaels, whether against whoever, he'd be the cheerful guy, even if, he wasn't coming back in the right circumstances, because that audience just doesn't care about this stuff.
No.
I think I don't know how longevity-wise it works, though. Like, how long can you go with this? Because once you've done that program and that kind of work-shoot program, you've done it. And then what does he have left? What does he have after that? Because we never saw anything different in AEW.
No.
We never saw anything past that, and I don't know if he does have anything like that. I think it's amusing that Drew McIntyre is probably cutting the promos that he should be cutting.
Right.
So,
well,
I don't know.
We talked about that with Collision, right? Punk's so creative, Punk has all these ideas, and, we didn't really see any ideas in Collision. It was a lot of squash. It was a lot of squash matches, right? So my thing right now is kind of good for him. He's back on TV. He's getting cheered. He'll do whatever he does until whatever. Wake me up once he starts becoming a hot mess, because that's the stuff that that's the stuff that I'm interested in. I'm not interested in some boring program and let's analyze every video frame of whatever to see what the reference could be or anything else. This is the part of the show. We've seen this movie before, right? Trish, where he comes back and, oh my God, the kid, he can't wait to work with the young kids, and the people backstage are huge fans and they're taking selfies with him. And oh my gosh, he's so happy to be here, and he's Mr. Company Man and everything else. It goes badly. It doesn't end well. We've all been here before. Maybe this time it'll be different, right? But realistically, at some point it's going to be, and we saw it already, because after that promo didn't go so great, there were a lot of media stories. A lot of media stories in the next 2 to 3 days, which was kind of an interesting play, considering that there was some conversation. He's not going to talk as much.
He's not going to talk as much. He's moved on. He's changed. Right. He doesn't want to involve these things. And then as soon as his promo gets kind of shot down, they all then he starts feeding in insider lines straight away. So yeah, whatever. It's just, look, it's the same thing as it was in AEW. The first thing I said, to a few people that some people will remember is, let's see where we are in a year.
Exactly.
He's not the main guy here. He's not anywhere close to the main guy. Even in this part, he's not Roman Reigns. No. You can argue he's not even Randy Orton. So there's so many people at that level, he's not going to be able to dominate in that way. And that will become a challenge to him. I don't think he should main event the first WrestleMania that he does.
No.
You've got Rhea Ripley and Becky Lynch on that side. If that gets hot, that should be probably night one. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But there's no guarantees for him. So yeah, let's see where they are in a year. Let's see what traction they make in a year. There's some big numbers to go up against in the first part of quarter one, with how strong the Sami Zayn story was.
Yep.
With Cody as well. So yeah, we'll see how they do. I don't buy into this whole kind of it kills AEW thing. I think it does less damage than what Cody did, because Cody was such a shock. And let's be honest, if you were giving up AEW because of CM Punk, you've probably done it already.
Yeah.
There we go.
All right. That's kind of, Then that's where we're at with Punk, folks. See, nice and quick. Wasn't that fun? We're not spending the rest of our lives on this topic because it's boring now.
Let's just move on.
Exactly. All right. So other things we were wrong about, the Corrections Edition.
Let's go.
Corrections Edition. We were wrong about the all-in ticket numbers. At the end of our last episode, we felt that the ticket sales were going to start off slowly. We both were not 100% confident in this prediction, but neither one of us were like, oh, they're going to sell a ton right out of the gate. As of December 8th, WrestleTix is showing all in at 36,876 tickets sold. And according to Tony Schiavone on Rampage on Friday night, they've sold almost $4 million worth of tickets. So 2 pieces of things for this, right? 2 pieces of things. The first one is that number of ticket sales is pretty impressive. For all the reasons we talked about, it's 8 months away. It's the second year in a row they're doing it. They they probably sold, if they get to 70,000 by the time they hit August, I think everybody will agree that's a huge success, right? I think if they hit 60,000 the second year, people will think it's a pretty good success. And they're already halfway to that point. So that's pretty good. And this is despite the fact that, like, as we talked about, they probably didn't need to raise ticket prices. And they didn't fully raise ticket prices on every seat across the board, but there were rises in some specific spots on the map. I know there were friends of ours who talked about going and said that the same seats they bought last year were more pricier. So that's an interesting element. And then the second piece of this is the fact that AEW has chosen to advertise their success with a dollar amount and not the number of tickets sold. Like, that kind of struck me in the face when I was watching Rampage, where I was like, why do I care how much money you're making? Like, that was just a weird, I don't know, that was a bit of a like, I feel like them touting how many tickets they've sold is an achievement that they should be able to do, but I don't know if I want to hear that translated into actual dollar amounts. Am I totally off base with this, Trish?
No, I hate it. Please stop mentioning it. Please stop mentioning how far you've come away from actually, like, caring about people, right? How many people you can get into a building. Right. It probably says to me that the actual number is probably slightly below what WrestleTix has. Okay. And there might be some unreleased seats in them areas. But whichever way you look at it, anything above 30,000 was probably way above what anyone estimated for this. It's a second-year sale, and they can go either way. So, people just say, oh, Wembley's just an attraction. Yeah, well, Wembley's attraction like the first time. Right? You've been to Wembley. Once you've been to Wembley, you've seen a show there, it's done. And they thought, well, boxing draws like this because they know it's like a good night. And I think, yeah, but the boxing draws because it's, it's Anthony Joshua, whether it's, it draws for names. So you go to see that name box. So I don't think it's the same thing.
No.
And it is a month before Christmas. They released them actually just before most people got paid in this country. So it was quite surprising to see them go strictly so well. They're already kind of on the other side, onto the hardcam side, which is great. And I think it's a really good start. You're probably going to get an even greater lift in the next few weeks just because people, late Christmas presents, that sort of thing. So probably have got that timing right. And it hasn't seemed to be too much affected by the two WWE events in Europe, in Berlin and in Lyon. People get really weird about how to say Lyon, by the way. I'm not sure why that is. Lyon.
Are the Americans pronouncing it lions?
I don't know what it's all a mix. They seem to be very confused about why it's in Lyon and not in Paris. And it's like, well, Paris has got the Olympics next year. I don't think they need a WWE event.
No.
But And so probably what they should look at is, you're not going to probably, touching last year. I don't think that's possible. If it is, we can do another correction. But Clash at Castle was announced at 62296. WrestleTix had it at 62215. I think that was around 48,000 paid.
Yep.
So that's probably what you want to be looking at beating. And if you can do that with the big stage setup, it might actually look more impressive on TV than it did last year. I was really happy to see that number. I think there's been so much not bad news, but there's been so much kind of talk about ticketing, and we've talked it to death ourselves, how many issues and what they can do to solve that, and how many things are kind of going unsolved at the current time with that. But this is, Live Nation are pretty much taking charge of this one, and you can see the benefit, and they do really good promotion as well. They sent Claudio over.
Yep.
He did a huge media run, went to the Arsenal game,
which
was all over TV, and so fair play to them. It's a good start. It's a good start.
It's one of those things where, and this harkens back to there's ways in which AEW is not going well right now, and I think you can point to a lot of ticket sales, and I think one of the challenges is that if the business metrics are sort of all over the place. And Dave Meltzer talked about this in a Wrestling Observer newsletter he did not last week, the week before, where he talked about AEW's overall business, and while the product doesn't feel hot, they are pretty successful this year, almost more so than they have been any other year. And the fact that they've increased the number of pay-per-views while not significantly losing a chunk of the audience for those pay-per-views is very impressive. The Full Gear number, I think, is at 135,000 purchases?
136 as of Friday.
Which, again, given the fact that they did Full Gear right after they did Wrestle Dream and All Out and All In the course of like 3 months, that's a pretty impressive number, right? Like, is it a benefit to is adding all of this programming a benefit to them creatively? Like, that's a different conversation. But I think one of the problems with having like any kind of conversation about metrics right now is that you can sort of pick and choose for bad metrics and, you know, be like, well, this is a problem and this is a problem. Like, I think you have to be really careful, much as we are, Trish, because we are always very careful in the way we apply metrics. We don't fall into the traps that other people do. Where you can essentially sort of, you kind of have to be a little bit careful. Sometimes you can say, well, this is hurting them, this isn't hurting them, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, they're doing great with the ticket sales for All In. It's much better than I think anybody could have predicted. And like you said, fair play to them, to borrow a phrase.
It's the most English thing I've said on this
extremely English.
There's been too much sporting talk in the last few weeks.
Oh, sports.
Anyway, on sports.
On sports, let's talk to another thing we were wrong about. I'm loving this overall topic of like, you know, what we can't do. And that is the Continental Classic, folks. Also known as the Connie, the C2, you name it, we're calling it that. Yours truly, myself, called it dry and boring 2 weeks ago. I was wrong. This shit has been fantastic. We have been enjoying the hell out of it. It's excellent from both a match perspective and a storytelling perspective. And it's been significantly aided and abetted by the pre- and post-match promos that they have been putting on social media and also airing on the shows. Not every single one of them makes it to air, but a lot of them do, and they've been fantastic. So, Trish, talk about how much you're loving the Connie.
Right, so I compared it to the Nations League football competition in the Europe. And then on Tuesday night, I'm watching the last round of the Nations League, which is for a ridiculous prize or way to get it. And I'm absolutely gripped to it, like watching 2 games at once, going, oh my God, what's going on? And there was all this drama. And then I looked at myself and thought, you spent 4-6 weeks saying, for God's sake, why am I even watching this? Why are they playing in this? They should all be at their clubs. So it's amazing how a little bit of drama and how competition can kind of overcome anything like that. Yeah, because nobody still really knows what the prize is or cares what the prize is. No. But it's a tournament and people are now invested in it.
Yeah.
The most important things for me for this is that everyone's wrestling every week.
Yeah.
So that was something that was really key at the start of AEW, is that you saw everybody every week. And they're out in front of the crowd every week, so they have that connection with people. And then you're right, these after kind of match promos are great because we're hearing from every performer every single week. It's everything that kind of we wanted to see as in terms of course correction.
Yes.
And it does make things feel more important. It makes these characters feel more important. And, you know, they took some time to sort out who was going to be in it, and they really did have no idea on certain people until right at the very end. But what they have done is they have told everybody, you know, here's what you're doing, when you're wrestling who, and here's your finishes. So they've allowed them to then go and tell their stories, which is also a complaint that a number of talent have had, you know, about not knowing what they're doing to the very last minute and then how that impacts on it. And then it's really funny, isn't it? Because there was all this stuff about, you know, put your money where your mouth is, you're getting no interference, and you're getting wins and losses mattering. And all lo and behold, you know, I think people have been really receptive to it. And they like this version of AEW with kind of them things in place, like they were at the start, far more than they did the kind of constant interference running around everywhere. So it's really funny that you've sort of said, oh, we'll challenge you on this. And I almost felt like they didn't want it to succeed, to kind of show that people have moved on from it. And I don't think that's really been the case.
No. No, like I said, if you tell me it's important, I'm going to treat it like it's important. And the one thing you have to say about all these wrestlers that are in this, you know, every single one of them, all 12 guys, they are absolutely treating this like it's important. They are promoting like it's important. They are wrestling like it's important. The whole thing is, you know, if you want to say, like, here's the basic format of what we're doing, and then hand it over to the performers and say, you know, make it something that I want to see. Boy, these guys are knocking it out of the park. Every single one of them. Like, what a great showcase for Mark Briscoe, right? He's not winning a lot of matches, but you've put him out there in a babyface singles way that, you know, he was doing a little bit on Honor Club, but not to this degree. Like, there's people like, he should be somebody who should be on TV more. Like, I don't think there's anybody that you're looking at in this Continental Classic and saying, I could see less of this guy.
Maybe Jay Lethal.
Maybe
I'm just harsh.
Maybe Andrade.
Maybe. No. It's an interesting one because the way that tournaments work, they're advertising matches very late, which...
That makes no sense to me.
So, it doesn't make any sense for ticket sales.
No, it really doesn't.
Some of these towns, like we've got coming up, they've got 3 dates around the Dallas Metroplex area. And all 3 of them aren't exactly, flying out the door, although Arlington is recovering quite nicely. But it would really help if you can announce them, weeks out in advance. But I can see the reason not to, in a way. Because, one, we see issues with talent availability. Brody King Garcia didn't happen this week.
Right.
On top of Danielson not being available first week. But then also you don't want to tell anybody that, the lineup's not great this week on TV weeks in advance, because they just go, I'm just going to skip that episode.
Right.
So I can see kind of the thinking behind it, but I don't know if... I would prefer to see the kind of groups laid out probably next year. And maybe if you have, more kind of big rating draw wrestlers in it, then, if you look at the Dynamite group, you've got Jon Moxley, and he's probably the only main rating name. And then you've got, just underneath, you've got Jay White and Swerve. But he's the guy who's the recognised name. So if you have more of them in one group, then maybe you would. But I think it's kind of a balance between the two. The one thing I do think it indicates going out of this, and, I'm always thinking... It's probably my bad habit, is rather than enjoying something currently, I'm always thinking kind of 3 steps ahead. But is that this kind of structure, and it really has added a structure to the shows again, is much closer to kind of the feel of original AEW. We have back-to-back matches at the start of the show, which haven't happened in God knows.
No, at least a year, at least since MJF has been champion.
Yeah, and... I think that, they need to find a way to keep that structure as they go into the new year. And they need to find a way to keep wins and losses meaning something. I don't know if you want the rankings back, but there has to be something like that. Beating one person and demanding a match for a world title is just not enough. There needs to be something that make wins and losses matter every single week.
You can get away with that with the secondary belts, like... You want to do that with the TNT and the international title, fine. That's not the end of the world, but you shouldn't be doing that. The world title should not be like, beat one guy one time. Oh, hey, I get a title match. Like, it needs to be better than that.
And the other thing is it's allowed stars to wrestle stars on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So we can do Swerve Jay White. We can do Jay White and Jon Moxley in a couple of weeks. We can do Swerve and Jon Moxley next week. And that should happen more. We've got too much into predictable matches. And you can argue, this tournament's probably, especially in the Dynamite group, not had kind of an upset early on to kind of get people into that kind of feeling that anything can happen. But, you tell different stories. So you've got the kind of Naito Eddie Kingston story in the blue group, who I expect to come all the way back and face Danielson in the block final. Do you know how many people have forgotten that we have block finals? Even people who watch a G1, it's quite funny. And then you've got the kind of top dog story in the other group, where, Swerve and Jon Moxley, and then I think Jay White will be involved in that at the end there. But yeah, so I'd like to see all them kind of things continue, and I think there's going to be a real kind of, not a change, but it could be a kind of change in feeling and direction coming out of this, because, Max has had a lot less time. His stories have had a lot less time. Have they got better? What do you think? Since Full Gear.
Yes.
Has Max's stuff got better or not?
Yes. I think, this is the secondary piece of this, right? With the Continental Classic taking up so much time, there's a lot of other stories that have kind of dropped a little bit to the background. And in some cases, that has been beneficial for them. And I think MJF is an absolute, the biggest beneficiary. Him getting less TV time at this point is smart. It's just a lot of MJF all the time. And we've talked about this for weeks. He needed to have been kind of taking a back seat, and especially to some just really good wrestling matches, which we've had, And I think part of the benefit is, again, we've seen a lot of Jay White on TV for the last couple of months, but this Continental Classic Jay White is like a different guy.
Yeah.
Like
it's the Jay White. It's the Jay White that us who watch New Japan were so excited to see. Like,
yeah.
Absolutely.
He's doing a fantastic job. I talked about Mark Briscoe. Roosh has just been freaking killing it. Like, Andrade's been putting on great matches. Eddie Kingston has like a storyline again. Like, babyface Eddie Kingston back in the mix. I mean, God, thank you. That's all we want, right? Give us your baby faces. And like, so I think it's been just, I don't think there's a negative thing that's come out of it unless it's Bryan Danielson's doctor's bill, right? Like, so adding that structure and kind of going back to that place of like, okay, this is the amount of TV time I have. These are the people who I'm going to decide are going to be on television, and how am I going to adequately break it up amongst them, right? Is something that I think hopefully they can figure out what they're doing here. But yes, the less TV time for MJF, I'm a big fan of it. And my suspicion is that you are as well, Trish.
I'm going to, okay. Nothing I'm going to say there is not going to get me in more trouble. What did you think of the promo with Hangman this week?
Oh, yes. So Hangman had not appeared on television since Full Gear. He showed up on Dynamite this week, 12/6, and did a surprise, like, stumbled upon Renee Paquette outside of MJF's locker room interview. And this was like the first interaction between Hangman and MJF since Double or Nothing 2019, right? Like right around that time.
No,
I don't think
they did the Diamond Ring.
The Diamond Ring, yes,
late in 2019, yeah.
Yes, late in 2019, but it's not been, it's been like 4 years, right? Sure. Like, this is one of your last big matchups that you pretty much have, where these are two guys that haven't really talked or engaged with each other. It was fascinating to see it. I, quite frankly, would make both of these guys essentially your generational rivals, although I think MJF has been usurped in that by Swerve, unfortunately for him. Like, they held off too long on this promo. Like, and the Wednesday night show, in a lot of ways, the non-Continental Classic stuff felt like a reset to me. The stuff with Roddy coming out of the wheelchair, the stuff with MJF. MJF was a full heel in that promo with Hangman.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he was a full heel with Hangman. And I was fascinated by that because I think you and I have talked about whether or not Hangman was going to come back from the Full Gear Texas death match as a heel, whether Swerve was going to turn babyface. And I think that doesn't seem to be the way that they're going right now. Like, what are you thinking about this? Because my gut's telling me they're not switching those guys' alignments just yet.
I thought what they did was very clever, and I probably should stop underestimating Hangman's ability to do this. Because, that's how we felt, and especially after the first couple of weeks of the Classic and the way he was presented, getting the first pop coming out in the match with Jay Lethal. But what they did was really interesting, because, Hangman was not planned to be involved with Max, and isn't planned still, according to Sean Mustap, for a match with Max in the near future. But, you don't always need him to face Max. If Joe picks the belt up, you need a strong first challenger for Joe, or, challenger going into Revolution. So you have that option there. But what they did was they gave him kind of a motive going forward.
Yes.
And, and what you've done is you've changed the projection for the world title. So you have had both Swerve and Hangman talking about going for the world title. One, because they want to be the first African-American world champion. The other, because they will do everything to stop that person being world champion because he broke into his house and stood in his son's room. And I thought it was really clever, because now that, there's a fan expectation that they will be in that title scene. So you can't take people away from that now, because you've told that audience that. Yeah. It shakes everything up completely. You're not going to just have the Max verse for another 9 months.
Oh my God.
And what really shook that up was, Full Gear doing so well after the show.
Yep.
All them late buys, and people, they all know where them late buys come from. Nobody thinks it comes from Max and Jay White. They know that it came from Swerve. I was thinking about this a lot, and not just because of Kenny's little kind of Twitter post on Max, but on the taking the mick out of the Samoa Joe story. But the one thing we've been missing from AEW since Kenny and Hangman is some sort of long-term story.
Yes.
Some sort of thing where we thought, okay, this can go on for, you know, a long period of time, and we know that this is coming. So you could have Swerve work with other top guys in the meantime.
Right.
You know, get him used to working in big programs if you want to. But people now know, and they now think, because it's being repeated to them, that Swerve is going to get that title, and he's tied with Adam Page.
Yes.
So there's a sense of that inevitability. And that's probably the first time in forever that we've actually had a long-term story.
Yes.
We've not had one since, you know, probably Kenny and Hangman. So it's been real missing, and it's now these two guys tied together, unfortunately for Max. You know, people don't want to see... if Swerve is to win that belt, I think he has to win it from Hangman. And you don't even need to do it the first time. You know, one of the most famous stories of the last decade was Okada trying to beat Tanahashi at Wrestle Kingdom for that belt and not being able to do it the first time. I think he cried his eyes out, I think, the second time. And, you know, you can do that if you then want to have Swerve chase at the end as a babyface. But you don't need to turn Hangman. You can be Tanahashi.
Right.
You can just do the dark Hangman character, and he's very good at that. But what I thought was really interesting in that promo was, you know, we spent months looking at Max doing the call and repeat babyface stuff, and all of a sudden it's like he's up against a proper babyface in a promo, and he automatically is that heel character. It's like we retconned back to where they should have come out of Revolution.
Well, that's one of the things with this storyline where I'm, you know, and to borrow a little bit from Tunnel Talk this week, which talked about this, I think, a little bit more in depth than we will, but I'm very happy to hand wave away anything that I need to hand wave away just to get the hell out of the storyline. And Trish, I almost made a mean joke when you were talking about like long-term storylines. We haven't had them in a while. And I was like, oh, the devil storyline isn't long-term enough for you. But like, I don't care. Like, there's a whole thread on the Figure 4 message board, like, who's the devil in AEW? And I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. No. Like, there's nothing in, like, can we just get it over with so that we can move on to something else? Because this is not it. This is not it. And, like, it just needs to end. And I don't know, like, however they figure out they want to get out of it. And I think what it seemed like to me, right? And there's been a lot of theories about who the devil is, and I've always expected that it was just Adam Cole, right? Like that just to me seemed like, okay, it's Adam Cole. It's Roddy, it's the Kingdom, it's Wardlow, it's Adam Cole. But based on the way they did the whole thing this week with MJF and not doing the match, this was the first time where I was like, oh, it might be MJF. And I also felt like if it is MJF, it wasn't MJF like 3 weeks ago. Like... Like, whatever plan they had as to who the devil was, like, A, the reveal was never going to be really interesting, and B, it's not going to be interesting now because they've changed it, and it's not going to work. And I'm kind of okay with that because, like, just get me out of this. Like, whatever you got to do to end this at World's End. The devil having his own merch. Did you see they have a he has a shirt? What is that? Help me. What are you
He's got as many shirts this year as Hangman.
Oh, God. Why? Oh, God. I have not yet encountered anyone who genuinely cares about this storyline and is like genuinely curious about this beyond just kind of like we'll see. Have you? Like, am I doing that kind of like selection bias where I'm just like, well, this is my... Do you know of anyone that's like, this is great?
No, most people just want it to end. And, you know, it really is affecting people's enjoyment of AEW now. And, you know, they're going into 2024. You've got WWE with a number of hot acts. Like, there can't be all this focus on one thing anymore either.
No.
And they've got to get behind more people, and that means removing that kind of glass ceiling that we've had since, you know, MJF started this story. And if that means you've got to divert it sideways and you need to use a transitional champ, fine. But you've got to move on now.
Yeah.
And here's a question. So, you know, this Continental Classic takes them up to World's End as well. And then you've got Joe and MJF. So you've got kind of this reset. The TV currently is missing a number of kind of big drawing names. So, you know, Kenny Omega's not doing very much, Chris Jericho's not doing very much, you know. And you've got other people, you know, Britt Baker, for anyone want to say what they can about her, she was a TV draw.
Yep.
The Bucks draw, you know, Copeland needs to start working with younger guys. Do you think, being that how many people are missing at the moment and how they seem to kind of be punting a lot of TV shows, that this TV deal's already done?
I have no idea. Like, here, so let me preface this by saying everything I say after this is just complete spitballing. I have no idea, and I'm not going to pretend that I do. There are people that swear up and down that AEW's had a TV deal in place for some time. There are people that swear up and down that they haven't had one. I am fascinated by, like you said, the fact that we're missing a bunch of big stars from TV, right? And the Continental Classic's propping some stuff up in a good way, but like you said, there's no Bucks, there's no Kenny Omega, there's no Chris Jericho. Orange Cassidy's been relegated to Rampage, which is fine, but like, you know, that's a pretty big drawing guy. So why are you, if this is the point where you're really trying to ramp up interest in your product and get that television deal and make things hot again, like, why are you doing that? And so, like, unless there's, you know, a varying assortment of injuries that we don't know about or personal situations that people are going through or what have you, it just seems weird that this is what's going on. Unless you're planning on, unless you did get that TV deal, you're waiting to announce it in the new year for some business-related reason, and once you do, you're going to come out guns blazing. But I don't know. I genuinely could not tell you that I if you told me that, I might believe it, but right now I kind of don't. Like, it just, but again, the whole thing just seems so odd to me. Like, Collision, the way Collision is put together has seemed so, we've talked about this endlessly. It's been so odd to me forever. Like, why you wouldn't do more for that show, regardless of what it's going up against on, you know, like PLEs and stuff like that. Like, it just seems weird that you would continue to punt on that over and over again. So,
yeah, it's Collision's is a fair point, and you have all these talented people sat at home, and I do wonder if, you know, Collision will be up against lesser competition. There'll be a few NFL playoff games, but after that in January, compared to what it is now with, you know, 10 college football games, 12 guys,
right.
How many college football games? Yeah, Peter's going to shout at me, but it's like, I don't know how many college football games. But once you get out of the bowl season, the NFL playoff season, then Collision has more of a free run. So then do you start to kind of amp that up? Are you going to start putting everybody on TV? You know, I think the Golden Jets probably are quite sure to be world tag champs going into the new year. They're already setting up kind of Takeshita and Hobbs as their kind of opponents. So that's going to continue. Yeah. So are you going to get everybody back on TV? And then who are you going to push? You know, I thought the Moxley quote this week when he highlighted the kind of the importance of the homemade guys, of guys like Orange Cassidy, guys like Hangman Page, guys like Darby Allin, and how important that is to them going forward, because they feel like they're ours, they're kind of our guys, they're the guys we've grown with. And are you actually going to push them to the next level, that they are going to be leading programs, not right. in a program with Chris Jericho, in a program with John Moxley, in a program with Bryan Danielson? You know, we've just seen Hangman do that for the first time with Swerve. So, and Swerve probably actually feels, I think he's like the fourth guy that people feel like he's ours as well, even though he came from the, you know, WWE NXT system. I think you get the same feeling with that. So yes. Are they going to move that progression onwards, or are they going to flood it with these guys, these name guys, or people that have kind of driven ratings in the past? I think that's quite an interesting thing to watch going into 2024.
I mean, it's funny that you brought up Moxley's quote about those three guys in our corrections episode, because this is a thing about which you and I have agreed with John Moxley and stated it vigorously many times on this very podcast, Trish, and on other podcasts, that, you know, why you wouldn't be presenting these guys in the forefront. I do think that's a thing that is important. And part of the reason why, like, and I kind of wanted to touch back on this, I know we kind of moved off from the devil a little bit, but part of it is that, like, I'm willing to entertain that MJF is the devil for the first time because Hangman told me he was, right? Like, sure. There's he's the first character. Like, I don't really like Roddy, like, hilarious, but like Roddy can say MJF's the devil and I don't believe him. But if Hangman tells me he is, I have to really seriously consider it because of what my relationship with Hangman as a viewer, right? And I think that's the thing that, like, you know, we had a discussion with this with some of our friends this week about whether Orange Cassidy is presented as a top guy. Right. And they were saying, well, he's absolutely presented as a top guy. And you and I were kind of like, no. And I think the clincher in my argument was, if Orange Cassidy is not in a match with John Moxley, is he main eventing a pay-per-view? Is he main eventing a pay-per-view with like a Roosh or a Takeshita or somebody at the upper mid-card level? And the answer is no, right? Mm-hmm. He's not. Like, you know, so I think that's kind of where that ceiling is. And I think the same can be said for, you know, Hangman's probably the only exception right now where I think you could slot him in. You know, Darby Allin did main event. Did they main event?
He did Wrestle Dream, but with
Thank
Christian,
you.
which
With
felt like it was more Christian's thing.
Match than anything else. So, I think they have to freshen up this main event scene. We've talked about this a lot. And this is where, again, if you want to do a transitional belt on Joe, like, fine. I'm also at the point where I think it's possible they add somebody to this World's End title match. Like, part of me wonders if they're not going to do that. Like, I could see it happening, although I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Anything's a possibility now. I think it's much more fluid than it was 5-6 weeks ago. But
which, thank God.
Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting period, that period up to Revolution. I think what's happened with the Continental Classic has kind of helped to rebuild some trust from the fan base.
Yeah.
But trust takes a long time to earn back, and it's been pretty clear over the last kind of year and a half, probably since Double or Nothing 2022, there's been quite a lot of loss of that trust.
Yeah.
So it's going to take time. And for me, I keep saying it, but there's all this thing about losing fans to WWE. I think the losing fans from their original base is probably much more damaging to them. And
I agree with that.
We're in that time period where that's going to be challenged as well, because we're coming into the weeks of huge Japanese shows.
Yeah.
And that is going to kind of divert interest. And that's probably a nice move into kind of last thing we wanted to talk about, really, which was the reports around Kazuchika Okada potentially leaving New Japan.
Yes.
So I'm going to preface this, look, we're not keeping it strong style. We're not Super J-Cast or East Inflosion or any of these people that are much better at talking about Japanese pro wrestling than we are. But,
oh, God, yes.
Yeah, so, but you can look at the some of the potential kind of impacts and things and reasons that potentially are behind this. And I thought it was interesting that the Sports Illustrated article was full of quotes from WWE.
Yeah.
And from Shawn Michaels in particular. So that felt like that was probably related to kind of the reason why this was put out there. And, the thing is New Japan contracts come up every year. Not so much for foreign-based wrestlers who are on full-time deals, but definitely for the Japanese talent. So this isn't an unusual occurrence. What is unusual is that it's someone on Okada's level. So the last person similar to leave was Nakamura in 2016, but Nakamura has never really been seen as, the guy in New Japan. He was one of the guys, with Tanahashi and with Okada, but he was always the kind of IWGP. He was always, I guess, in AEW. The Orange Cassidy level.
Yep.
In the most part, even though he held the heavyweight belt. But with Okada, it's quite interesting. He's maybe not he isn't the most popular wrestler in New Japan. He's not their corporate kind of guy, that's Tanahashi. But he has always been their champion since he kind of came into the kind of realm of the belt 10 years ago. And it would say a lot for New Japan to lose him, especially at this time period where they're currently rebuilding. What do you think about Okada going to WWE? Do you think there's any likelihood to it, or would you see any benefit in him to do that?
It's one of those things where it's a little bit like the Osprey question, right? Where it feels so obvious that it feels like there must be a trick, right? Like, it's, one of the things that sort of shocked me when I first saw people responding to the news that, Okada might be seeking a contract in the US was, well, obviously it's going to be WWE, like, obviously. And I'm like, to me, again, it's similar to Osprey. If you're going to sign with one of these two companies and you are someone from, another country with ties in that country, et cetera, are you going to sign with the company that forces you to move to the United States and won't allow you to work for any other promotion, including the promotion you came from? Or are you going to sign with a company that might be more flexible about the dates they want you to come in, and would allow you to continue to work for, take dates with your old company, right? And again, all of this assumes the money is equal. Mm-hmm. So to me, the sort of duh answer was I could see Okada signing with AEW much more. Again, assuming that he is just dead set and determined, which I can't say we know. I'm not trying to say that's a definite. I don't want to be, making that assumption. But for the purposes of this hypothetical conversation, assume he wants to sign with a US company. Then my default moment would be, well, yeah, it would be AEW, right? And I wonder if some of this conversation, and it keeps going back to well, he and Nakamura are really good friends. I have a lot of very good friends that I don't necessarily have to work with. I could go work for somewhere else and see them still occasionally. Especially given WWE's background in terms of how they present, wrestlers from other countries, that's not something they've had a strong, and I think there's some arguments, I think, to be made there that they still have not covered themselves in glory recently with the way that they've presented wrestlers from other backgrounds in other countries.
Tozawa.
Yeah. But why the default would be, well, obviously he wants to go to WWE, kind of was weird to me. I don't know if that struck you as well. I would think that if he does want if he wants more of a presence in the United States, again, I would be less shocked by him signing something like the first dual New Japan AEW contract than I would be him going full-time to WWE, especially given this is the same guy that had such a terrible experience in TNA all those years ago that, we still hear about.
It was interesting to see that WWE have been kind of using the bait of Nakamura and giving him a push in this period. And then, making little chaos references and stuff. And Nakamura is an interesting one because Okada was there when he didn't win the title. Again, right. It's AJ Styles in WrestleMania 34. He was actually sat a block away from us in the section that we were in. And they didn't look too impressed, both him and Suzuki, in what happened there. So I always kind of think back to that when I think of what's his impression of WWE. Having said that, Okada's body isn't in a fantastic place. Right. He's still a fantastic wrestler. He's not... I wouldn't say he's... Other people might argue this, and they'll say because he's doing the current, the heel character, heel face character, but he's hurting the younger guys. He's just chasing them around and kind of beating them down, Kaido Kiyomiya, that sort of thing.
Yep.
But is his body up to the task of kind of continuing trying to do the huge matches like he would in AEW, or would he want the easier schedule, well, not the easier schedule, but the easier kind of taxing on his body each week if he was to work at WWE? I don't know. It depends what you want, because if he goes to WWE, there's no sureties. There's no say that he will be presented in a certain way, or presented as a star, or be able to reach that top level. Nakamura is the only person to ever win the Royal Rumble and then never go on to be world champion.
Right.
And that tells you something about the barrier and the ceiling that there is, considering that Nakamura is actually, I would say, a much more charismatic performer than Okada. Okada's champion, he has an aura, but he's not charismatic in the way that you'd normally expect for someone to adapt into that WWE style. And, potentially into that AEW style as well. So, probably the most controversial thing I've ever said on the pod, but I would question Okada's adaptability in some ways, and this comes from the pandemic. So when we went through the pandemic, they went to clap crowds in Japan, and Okada really struggled to adapt. You've probably heard people complain about the money clip.
Yes.
Actually, no, you've heard me in person complain about the money clip.
That too.
I swore about 10 times. I hate that stupid move. And that comes from the New Japan Cup in 2020, where he couldn't adapt to that no-clap crowd thing, and he just went to that. He wouldn't use the Rainmaker or his normal traditional finish without that crowd. And, guys like Shingo Takagi, guys like Tomohiro Ishii, guys like Kenny Omega, all adapted really, really quickly and figured that out, and he was, lost. And he felt lost until they had them crowds back. And that always makes me think, his style tends to be kind of for longer matches. Would he be adapted to that kind of week-to-week, shorter match period? Would he be able to deliver? It's the same questions that we asked about Jay White in a lot of aspects. Yeah. But will he be able to deliver that 15, 20-minute great match that would be expected of him on a regular basis? And that's where the dual contract might be a thing that is worth a look, because you could keep him, he's done I actually tagged this one. 96 matches this year, I think. Might be 100. No, it's 100. There we go. 96 is Tanahashi. Yeah, he's done 96 matches this year in New Japan. But you could just have him there for Wrestle Kingdom, potentially the New Beginning shows, Anniversary, New Japan Cup, Dontaku, Dominion, G1. Then you have a gap. Whichever autumn show they're going to run, they change the names quite often. Power Struggle, whatever. And then the road to Wrestle Kingdom. So you could really cut that right back and just have him on the big tours. And then he could work as a special attraction in AEW, which actually might be more beneficial than him trying to work week-to-week TV. I think that may be a better option. And in that way, you keep him out of the hands of WWE. Yep. You keep Forbidden Door as something that's important. Because, you know, if you look at from an AEW fan perspective, once you take Okada out of New Japan and you're already taking Ospreay, what have you got left for Forbidden Door?
Right.
Yeah, I do think they should add CMLL talent next year to that, and that should be the kind of the evolution of that, because that is their most successful North American show each year current, so you want to keep that fresh. But yeah, Okada's so essential to that brand in terms of their Western viewpoint and New Japan World subscription and things like G1, that you wouldn't want to take him out of that. But I don't know if him as a full-time talent in AEW, where, again, just like WWE, he'd be competing with numerous guys of the same level. They're never going to present him as the star over them. He's got to compete with Ospreay. He's got to compete with Kenny Omega. He's got to compete with Jon Moxley, with Bryan Danielson, with Adam Page. All these guys that can wrestle at the same level that he can. And he can have all these great matches, but a lot of these guys he's faced already as well. So I don't know what the challenge is there either. So yeah, it's kind of difficult because you can't imagine him not being in New Japan, and you wonder if it's just a method to kind of get what he wants from Bushi Road. And you know, Bushi Road are maybe looking at something like that in a dual deal as something that would, if as long as it generates the top line numbers for their big events, because they have to deliver for their shareholder, for their stockholders. Right. They are in that. So the same way that AEW has a relationship with its TV, with Warner Brothers Discovery, you know, New Japan have to make sure that their product is right for, rather than Abiba, rather than for the TV, but for Bushi Road. And that has been a thing. You know, if people in Stardom have complained about Bushi Road in kind of being involved in creative, people in New Japan have, with things like House of Torture. So he is critical for their presentation, and he could probably get whatever he wants out of them within reason, unless he really, really wants to go to the US.
I mean, it's one of those things where I don't think it came up in Sports Illustrated for no reason. I'm sort of surprised at WWE for pushing it as hard as they have, because I think it's clear that they've pushed it a lot, given that they're not, you know, they seem to feel like there's a chance that they could get him. But if I'm WWE and there's a chance I can't get him, I don't know that I'm pushing it either, because they've taken some big L's on free agents this year.
Sure, but they pushed for Ospreay in the press, and they pushed around Omega in the press as well.
Yeah.
So.
And they still didn't, you know, but
sure,
that's a side digression point. But I don't know. It's like you said, it's almost impossible to envision New Japan without him or him leaving. But there's clearly some element to it if it's being pushed like that in Sports Illustrated.
The other thing around this is that I keep hearing the phrase "the yen is down," and I want to smack somebody over the head so bad. Look,
I'm sorry.
Oh no! Like, the yen is down. The yen is down. Like, that's the only reason. Like, look. What's happened here is we have seen a kind of huge rise in wrestler contracts, and most of that's been to do with the invention of AEW and the TV money. And having these two rival companies has meant that the offer to wrestlers has become much, much higher than it was previously. Yes. So then you've got kind of the two American companies massively outflanking what can be offered by New Japan. And although, you know, Okada has many endorsements, and he also has, you know, he has to weigh it up with his family as well. And he said he wants to stay in Japan. His wife is a successful voice actress, actually more famous than he is, which people like to forget. They just want to go, oh, you know, his wife is... she's what she wants to do, and they've got a young child as well, and how that figures in is going to be key to this. But the thing with the whole yen thing is it's not too dissimilar to Major League Baseball at the moment. So we are seeing a number of Japanese players every year moving from the Japanese from the Nippon Baseball League across to Major League Baseball. Last year there was Kodai Senga and Seiya Suzuki, and this year we're going to have Yamamoto, and obviously Japanese player Shohei Ohtani has just signed the biggest contract in baseball history at $700 million. Like, what the hell?
That's a lot.
It's a lot of money, right? But yeah, that's the point, is that these amounts are astronomical, and they are being driven in a market way that the Japanese league cannot compete. And that's quite similar to what happened to New Japan at the moment. And New Japan, they are not able to offer that amount of money by their own. No. If they could do something, there could be a dual deal similar to what Takeshita has with DDT, with someone like Okada, and that keeps them in that kind of that orbit, then I don't know if New Japan would be against that as current. They have still financial issues coming out of the pandemic, although they look stronger in their business before. And, they've also got a number of other kind of underlying issues by the look of things. So, yeah, his key is that they keep hold of him to kind of help keep their business in order while they generate that kind of next generation of talent. The Yotasujis, the Umaras, the Ren Naritas, the Shota Umanos. He needs to be there to put them guys over, to move them to the next level. So then if he wants to step away in future, he can do.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, Japanese wrestlers also balance that loyalty factor.
Yeah.
As part of their business, as part of the culture. So if you let him go now, and he's not put over pretty much anybody this year, same as Will Ospreay hasn't, then you've really kind of lost that kind of opportunity to do that and to pass that torch. And, that would be similar to how they lost Kenny Omega in 2018, 2019, where they didn't think he was going to go, so they didn't have him elevate anybody else. So I don't want to see them make the same mistake again from my New Japan head. And it's kind of interesting because there isn't seemingly the opportunity to do that. So if he does go at the end of January in 2024, then there's a possibility they're going to drop the belts to United Empire for the trios belts that him, Tanahashi and Ishii hold currently. Yep. But the only guy he's really going to put over in a main show, look at Wrestle Kingdom, is going to be Bryan Danielson.
Right.
Oh, sorry, he's not going to Bryan Danielson's going to put him over.
Right.
So that's really, him and Sanada are really the only guys he's put over this year. Put Ospreay in a G1 match, but it's not really the same. So, yeah, they're not really seeing the benefit of that until the next generation. I just think it's such a kind of position of turmoil at the current time for Japanese wrestling.
Yeah.
And especially for New Japan, that it just feels like the wrong time. But if it's the right time for him, then I guess so be it. So, yeah, I think that's how I feel.
My main question for you, then, is, we talked about, like, okay, a dual contract, is that a thing? Who knows? My immediate impulse is to say, well, if he does a dual contract, it wouldn't be with WWE. Like, do you think that's...
No.
Yeah, they're not... You don't think they would do that either?
No, and they've got the rival TV deal with Abima now. And, that could... They use Muto to promote, but that could really use a lift. They've had weeks of down at, like, 33,000 viewers for an episode of Raw. So it would be a challenge to Japanese wrestling as it is, rather than wanting to work with Japanese wrestling.
Yeah.
And... it would ask questions. If he goes to WWE, it would ask questions of New Japan. People are already asking questions. There's around Nakajima going to All Japan and not going to New Japan. And maybe that happens still. We'll see after he drops the belt to Miyahara at the end of the month. But it would ask a lot of questions around Bushiroad, about New Japan's management. This is a guy that previously said he wanted to be there to help the company recover and generate that next generation. And they're not in that position yet. So... yeah, I don't think there's a possibility of a dual contract with WWE. No, absolutely not.
I just don't think I don't think WWE is wired that way.
No.
I don't think they were under Vince, and I don't think they are as TKO. I don't think they want to be second to anybody else or want to, be a partner to anybody else. They'd be willing to tell another company what to do, but
Yeah, it's very much like how the UFC runs. You know, that we are the top dogs, we are the top place to go, and anything that kind of challenges that or presents that differently, they're not interested in. So they will do what they can to get Okada, whether it's financially, whether it's limited dates, but I do not think that they will do any sort of deal with New Japan.
No.
All right.
So Trish, we have kind of wrapped up our main topics within an hour.
Sure.
And I think we have a little bit of room since the next time we will be talking to each other and our listeners is January. I feel like we could do a little bit of a prediction /
Oh, God. You've thrown this at me.
I have thrown it at you.
This was not in the Google Doc.
It was not in the Google Doc. Like, you know, more with AEW, I think, because I think we're both better in tuned with their booking than we are with the other promotions. But, like, you know, 4 weeks from now, World's End is aired.
Oh, God.
We've probably watched an episode of Dynamite and an episode of Collision afterwards. Where do you think we're at from a booking perspective?
I'm either going to be really happy or just, like, giving up on
The depths of despair or the lagoon of happiness.
It feels like one or the other, right?
I don't disagree with you.
What's my three lines? Golden Jets tag champions, the Bucks back on TV, Samoa Joe world champion, and what's my other line? Oh, Eddie Kingston wins the tournament. There you go. That's my prediction.
Trish, I was hoping we would disagree. God damn it. I wanted to have a big fight about it, but I feel the same way. I think the Golden Jets as the tag champions, which will be interesting. Do you think they will hold the belts for a long time, or do you think it'll be a relatively short reign?
I would hope it would be a relatively short reign, maybe 1 or 2 pay-per-view cycles, hit the new, kind of up to Revolution maybe, tops. Just to give some sort of longevity to the reign, but also I'd like to see it back on a actual tag team at some point soon. And I would like the Acclaim to come back and drop the belts to one of the Lucha-style teams and then have 6 mans each week that are just party Lucha matches. Thank you very much. Yes.
That would be, you know, if we could talk about our wishes for AEW beyond just like our predictions, I feel like the revitalization of the tag division would be, you know, probably right up there in terms of my choice. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I would like to see some fresh faces in the main event scene, which will be a surprise to our listeners because you and I have never discussed that topic before.
Never.
No, we don't have tropes.
Look,
we don't have tropes, Trish.
I know we said AEW, but it's me, and I don't think I can do one thing without saying, what's the one thing that I want for the new year? I want to see Naito do his roll call. And I don't care that it's against Sonata. I don't care about anything else. And if Nakajima comes and messes it up, I don't know if I'm going to be happy or sad. But I just want that roll call. I am a thing for watching painful wrestlers that make me feel pain on a constant basis. And it's a struggle. I need that roll call like I need air. Give me the roll call and I can be happy for months. I'll promise I'll be happy on this next show. I won't swear. I don't know. Just give me my roll call.
All she wants for Christmas.
All I want for Christmas is my Naito roll call. I've given up on Hangman for a few months. Just give me my roll call.
I've given up on Hangman. We're just happy he's on TV.
He's on TV.
He's on TV.
He's got a match next week. I'll take small victories, but just please give me my roll. There we go.
Versus Roddy. Yeah, I feel like that's pretty much... listen, I support you in this. I will fully get on board, you know. As a true friend, I will be like, yes, that's all we want. And we still have our $5 bet that Cody does not win WrestleMania.
It's like £3.64 on the exchange. Yes.
Exactly. You want to say the yen is down.
The pound is off. Forget the pound.
Forget the pound.
Economy's down, government's down. Anyway.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. I said I'd say that. Happy holidays. God, controversy. All these words that no one likes to say. Happy holidays is mine. I'm like, okay. Great, fine. Anyway, yeah. So happy holidays. There you go. That's. I'm not going to try and sound American again because I can't do it and it sounds awful. But anyway, for everyone out there, I hope you enjoy all the festive period, or if you are just watching New Japan for a week, if you enjoy the new year of New Japan. And we will see you back here on the 7th. Sorry, we were recording on the 7th. We'll see you back here on the 9th of January, where it looks like we will have plenty to discuss. And I may be in the abyss of no Naito roll call, or the happiest person ever, like I've drank too much Iron Brew. There you go.
Reference.
I need to go back to my locality. I can't handle this Americanism, so there we go. But yeah, so hopefully that's where we are at. And that will do for today's show. So if you wish to contact us, you can email us at trishandsarahpod@gmail.com, trishandsarahpod@gmail.com. You can find us at Twitter. It is Twitter, we're not saying X, right? Yeah.
No.
Cool. At Trish and Sarah, at Trish and Sarah. We are having great fun reposting lots of fun things on Twitter as of late. And you can also find us now on YouTube. You can watch videos of this same audio if you much prefer. This show is produced by the fantastic Leah of Tunnel Talk. Thank you very much, Leah, for everything you have done this year. It's been great to go on this journey with you and Sarah. And until next time, I have been Trish.
I have been Sarah.
And we will speak to you again in the new year.